A major shift in the Kandi, Todd divorce narrative has surfaced, raising new questions about what is really happening behind the scenes. Viewers were stunned this week after footage emerged showing Kandi visibly emotional, struggling to hold back tears as she addressed the end of her 11-year marriage. Her voice cracked, her hands shook, and the weight of the situation was unmistakable. But what happened just hours later is what has sent social media into overdrive. While Kandi broke down, Todd was captured in a completely different state, relaxed posture, light conversation, and what many are calling a slight smile. The contrast is sharp and, for many fans, unsettling. Why is one spouse visibly devastated while the other appears unusually calm, even comfortable? Is this simply two people coping differently, or is there something deeper unfolding, something the public hasn't been told yet? In this report, we break down the timeline, the hidden signs, and the growing theories circulating online. And immediately after this hook, we will highlight 3 to 4 key interview moments, the ones where expressions change, tones shift, and the truth nearly slips out. Stay with us. The picture is becoming clearer and stranger.
Kandi and Todd are getting divorced because, fill in the blank.
Because he no longer need her.
The unexpected unraveling of Kandi Burruss and Todd Tucker's marriage has left the entertainment world stunned, not because celebrity divorces are rare, but because of the stark emotional contrast between the two partners. While Kandi appears devastated, fighting back tears in every public appearance, Todd has been seen composed, even relaxed. That discrepancy has now become the center of public debate. After we opened with our exclusive hook and played the first interview clip, where a commentator claimed Todd no longer needed her and had served his purpose, the question grew even louder. Why does one spouse look broken while the other seems unbothered? To understand that contrast, we must go back, not just to where the marriage cracked, but to where signs were quietly building for years, unnoticed or dismissed. Kandi Burruss has always presented herself as a powerhouse, a songwriter, businesswoman, producer, actress, and one of the most successful personalities to ever appear on The Real Housewives of Atlanta. Through controversies, cast changes, and feuds, she always maintained composure. But in her recent statement announcing the divorce, her voice faltered. She spoke about protecting her peace, about focusing on her children, and about navigating this emotional transition. Her eyes were swollen, her tone fragile, and for the first time in years, the confident Kandi sounded unsure. This emotional vulnerability is what triggered sympathy across social media. Supporters described her demeanor as heartbroken, exhausted, and betrayed. Others insisted there had to be more behind her collapse, some private truth not fully disclosed. But while the public expected Todd to reflect the same grief, his reactions were surprisingly different. In multiple recent sightings, Todd Tucker looked composed, not distressed, not shaken, not weighed down. Observers noted he seemed light, even smirking. His tone in private conversations came off casual, not the energy of a man losing an 11-year marriage. This disconnect sparked speculation that he may have emotionally detached long before the public even knew something was wrong. When paired with that potent interview moment, he no longer needs her, many viewers began to form their own theories. Some say Todd looks relieved. Some say he looks guilty. Some say he looks like a man who is waiting for something. But everyone agrees, something about his calmness doesn't match Kandi's breakdown. Kandi and Todd met in 2011 during filming, a time when her success overshadowed everything else. Todd was ambitious, hardworking, but operating in a different financial orbit. Many questioned the relationship early on, not out of malice, but because of the imbalance. Kandi's fame versus Todd's behind-the-scenes background. Kandi's wealth versus Todd's slower financial rise. Kandi's mother's distrust versus Todd's insistence that the marriage was genuine. Even Mama Joyce accused Todd of being an opportunist, accusations that, at the time, were dismissed as harsh, unfair, or exaggerated. But those old suspicions have resurfaced now that the divorce aligns with the exact window of their prenup's 10-year clause. The narrative is not that Todd never loved Kandi. The narrative is that both love and opportunity may have been mixed in a complicated way. And that mixture may explain why Todd seems calm today, because emotionally, he may have processed this long before Kandi did. Inside the marriage, according to people close to them, Kandi carried emotional weight heavily. Being the high earner, providing financial security, managing multiple businesses, juggling fame, motherhood, and public scrutiny. Meanwhile, Todd was often criticized online as the house husband, the babysitter, or the cameraman who made it. Those labels weren't fair, but they existed, and they chipped away at the marriage. Sources say Todd grew frustrated with how fans talked about him. Others say he grew comfortable with the lifestyle Kandi provided. Still others claim the broadcasting of their personal lives, from arguments to business disputes, added pressure neither could fully handle. Whether Todd stayed out of love, comfort, or convenience is something only he knows. But what is clear is that the emotional timeline between them diverged sharply. Multiple insiders claim their connection shifted over time, not dramatically, but gradually. A growing emotional distance. More frequent disagreements. Todd traveling more. Kandi busy with Broadway, film, and business commitments. Different visions for the future. A visible change in on-camera chemistry. The moment fans now point to is an old video clip, Todd speaking to Kandi in a dismissive tone, suggesting tension had already been simmering beneath the surface.
The reason we believe that this marriage did not last, the reason I believe that marriage didn't last, is totally different than Perry. You can't bring other people in your bedroom. Right. I know Kandi swore by it. She said it doesn't affect the relationship. But when you bring another woman into your bed, that man is looking at that woman in a different way now. Okay, he knows how she gets down. He knows all of that. And it's not just Kandi. Rumors, T.I., all of her friends supposedly get down at these wild parties that they have. It's not setting up a marriage for success. I really think when you bring other people in your bedroom, now when we said that we heard that Todd was going to the Magic City, we were very specific, and messing with a stripper named Diamond, and they were going at it in the car. That's what we heard. But y'all didn't understand it. Y'all thought I was hating. Why would I hate on Kandi? Listen, I think Kandi's pretty and she is smart. I don't have no desire to be Kandi. I am not going to make that mistake. I think that's the beginning of the end of that relationship. You can't bring people in your bedroom. What are you thinking? Unless that's not your damn husband and you don't care it was a one night thing and you're not going to see them people no more.
Right.
I still wouldn't do it there because there's STDs and 3-letter words you can get sick with, but Kandi swore by it and she said it was fun.
Kandi's tears today might reflect grief over both the end of the marriage and the slow realization that she may have ignored the signs for too long. As the emotional contrast between them becomes more visible, fans have split into two camps. Todd was never fully invested. They believe the prenup timeline, his calm demeanor, and his past frustrations suggest he planned his exit. Todd stayed until he couldn't anymore. They believe he endured disrespect, pressure, and skepticism for a decade and simply reached his limit. The truth may lie somewhere in the middle, but the contrast remains undeniable. Kandi is falling apart. Todd is not. And that contrast demands further investigation. Which brings us to one of the most controversial, heated arguments circulating online, an argument that claims the marriage was compromised by blurred boundaries, third parties, and decisions that may have quietly damaged the foundation of the relationship long before the divorce was filed.
Acting disgusted with Kandi. Do you remember this? Let me play this. This. This is no way for a man to talk to.
And her friends was over there. She had her friends makeup people doing her hair, and she was being rude. Tell them just shut up, sex slave.
Let me I can't.
We know you, Kandi. We already said you just nasty. So basically, Kandi playing both sides, running the numbers up. Because you meet somebody, you kick it with them that's what
I want to really differentiate.
Kandi, you gave me the coochie in a couple of weeks. Well, we know you, Kandi. We already said you just.
You don't talk to your wife like that. And he had a look of disgust on his face, basically saying you're sleeping around with with men and women, and you just, for me, I don't know if I'm old, I might take questions later. You just can't bring people in your bedroom. It just doesn't work, Kandi Burruss.
Right. Basically what Todd was saying.
So you're right. We're giving you your kudos. You said it 2 years ago. You knew how Todd looked at her, and Perry told me, that's not gonna last.
Right. No, it's not gonna last. I mean, because ain't no man, regardless of whether you make more money or not, want to be treated like shit. When you get around your little makeup artist, you feel like you can talk to him any kind of way. But he basically, at that point, had got fed up and was just speaking his truth. And he said, girl, stop faking, because you know you loose as a goose. You gave me the coochie in 24 hours.
He said that. I cannot believe he said that.
As the story continued to unfold, something became increasingly clear to viewers paying close attention. The emotional divide between Kandi and Todd wasn't just noticeable, it was alarming. On one side stood a woman visibly shaken, struggling to steady her voice as she processed the end of a chapter she once believed would last forever. And on the other side stood a man composed, almost detached, showing a calmness that many people could not understand. When a couple separates, emotional imbalance is common. But the contrast here was so sharp that it raised questions even among neutral observers. The timeline only added more weight to the growing suspicion. Sources close to the couple revealed that their separation did not begin when the public first heard about it. Instead, the two had reportedly been living separate emotional lives for months. Kandi's heavy work schedule placed her in New York for extended periods, while Todd remained in Atlanta. Their communication reportedly dipped. Their connection weakened. And Kandi quietly stopped wearing her wedding ring long before cameras picked up on it. This kind of slow emotional unraveling doesn't always happen loudly. Sometimes it happens in silence, in distance, and in absence. And then there was the prenup timeline, the detail fans simply could not ignore. For years, chatter surrounding the marriage hinted at a 10-year clause, a specific point at which financial entitlements might change. Whether those entitlements involved property, business shares, royalties, or general support, one thing is undeniable: Todd did not leave early. He stayed until the marriage crossed that milestone. And it was only then, shortly after the threshold quietly passed, that the public announcement appeared. For many viewers following the story, this was not coincidence. This was strategy. But motives in marriages are rarely one-dimensional, and the dynamic inside their relationship was complicated long before lawyers became involved. Numerous commentators pointed to decisions made early in the marriage that may have created long-term cracks. The inclusion of outside partners in their private life was not a secret. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't whispered behind closed doors. In certain circles, it was talked about openly. And although Kandi was confident that such arrangements wouldn't impact her marriage, others disagreed strongly. The argument was simple. No matter the rules, no matter the boundaries, emotional attachment cannot always be controlled. And once that door is opened, it becomes difficult, sometimes impossible, to close. The interview clip you included earlier touches directly on this, the belief that inviting others into the relationship changed everything. According to that commentary, the marriage didn't break overnight. It broke quietly, gradually, and in ways neither person may have fully acknowledged at the time. If Todd found emotional or physical comfort elsewhere, even temporarily, that could explain why he appears so composed now. A person who begins detaching early rarely falls apart at the end. Meanwhile, a person who still believed the marriage could be repaired will always be devastated when the final decision is made. This interpretation gained traction when certain rumors resurfaced. The mention of Magic City, the alleged incident involving someone named Diamond, and the suggestion that Todd may have drifted emotionally long before the cameras caught anything. These details have resurfaced not because they are new, but because the divorce has given them new context. When a relationship ends cleanly, old rumors disappear. When it ends in emotional imbalance, people start re-examining every clue they missed. And yet, despite the theories, those close to Kandi emphasize that she truly believed the marriage could be protected. She believed trust could be rebuilt. She believed boundaries could be controlled. She believed the past would not define the future. But belief alone was not enough to keep the relationship from unraveling. Her tears in that public message were not just tears of heartbreak, they were tears of shock. Tears of disappointment. Tears of realization that what she thought she was protecting may have slipped away long before she noticed. Meanwhile, Todd's calmness, rather than signaling coldness, may signal acceptance. Acceptance of the relationship's decline. Acceptance of the legal terms. Acceptance of a life he had already stepped into mentally. This doesn't make him right or wrong, it simply highlights how differently two people can process the same ending. While Kandi was still holding on, Todd may have already let go. Another layer that continues to fuel the public conversation is the long-standing conflict with Mama Joyce. Viewers have not forgotten the pressure, criticism, and tension Todd endured throughout the marriage. Being labeled, dismissed, and blamed for years can take a toll on any person. And although many people side with Kandi because of her emotional pain, there is now a growing group of viewers expressing sympathy for Todd, believing he lived under constant scrutiny that eventually became unbearable. In these viewers' eyes, his calmness is not celebration, it is relief from years of being publicly judged. But regardless of which side people take, one unavoidable truth remains: Kandi did not expect this outcome. She did not see this ending coming in the way it arrived. The emotional shock on her face, the wavering tone of her voice, the vulnerability in her words, these were not rehearsed. They were the raw emotions of someone whose heart was still invested. And this is what makes the contrast with Todd's demeanor so haunting. As this report moves forward, the question becomes more complex. Did Todd emotionally exit the marriage long before the divorce papers were filed? And if so, was his calmness a sign of preparation rather than indifference? Or did the timing of the prenup simply create a moment of opportunity that aligned with a marriage already falling apart? These questions remain unanswered, and until both parties speak openly, the public will continue piecing together what they can from body language, interviews, and the scattered details coming to light. The moment Kandi cried in public wasn't just an emotional reaction, it was a turning point. It was the moment the world realized that what looked like a solid partnership was far more fragile behind closed doors. And it was the moment Todd's calmness shifted from surprising to suspicious. Observers now view the timeline differently, the silence differently, and the smile differently. The divorce is real. The emotions are real. And the signs, now that we are finally looking at them, may have been there all along. Insert interview here. The reason we believe that this marriage did not last: you can't bring other people into your bedroom. If you've been following this unfolding divorce saga, then you already know we've reached the point where the contradictions in their marriage can no longer be ignored. Kandi might be crying now, but the cracks didn't appear suddenly. They were there, tiny at first, then louder, then impossible to hide. And while the internet is torn between sympathy and suspicion, the real story lies in those small moments that build up over time. Moments that now make Todd's calm reaction look less like shock and more like a man who had emotionally checked out long before anyone else realized it. In part 2, we walked through the blurred boundaries, the third-party issues, and the decisions that may have set the marriage up for failure. But now, the real question becomes, why does Todd look so collected, almost relieved, while Kandi is struggling to hold herself together? And what happened behind the scenes that explains this emotional imbalance? People close to the situation say the shift between them didn't happen overnight, it happened slowly. For years, Todd felt like he was walking in Kandi's shadow. That wasn't Kandi's intention, of course, but it was the reality of their dynamic. She was always the star. She was the name, the brand, the machine that everyone watched, celebrated, and criticized. And while Todd benefited from that spotlight, he also drowned in it. At least, that's what insiders say. Todd was often labeled the house husband, the plus one, the guy who got lucky. Whether true or not, that image attached itself to him like glue. And eventually, he started to shrink away from it. Fame changes people, but reality TV fame? That kind of exposure digs into the layers of a relationship in ways most marriages will never experience. Every disagreement becomes a meme. Every eye roll turns into a storyline. Every rumor becomes a headline. And Todd hated that. Sources say Todd began pulling back years ago, traveling more, engaging less, choosing silence instead of arguments. At first, Kandi brushed it off as normal stress. But eventually, she noticed his tone changing, his energy shifting, that spark fading. Sometimes, the most dangerous thing in a marriage isn't a fight, it's indifference. And now, with the divorce public, people are pointing back to those signs. The moments where he seemed irritated. The episodes where his body language shifted. That interview clip where he spoke to her with irritation, even contempt. It all makes sense in hindsight. Meanwhile, Kandi did what she always does. She powered through. Booked jobs. Produced shows. Built businesses. Made appearances. She thought that if she kept everything running, everything else would fall into place. But relationships don't work like businesses. You can't schedule romance. You can't outsource emotional support. You can't deadline your way out of a marriage that's deteriorating from the inside. And that's why, when the news finally broke, she looked devastated. Because for Kandi, the divorce wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the end of the thing she thought she held together through effort, consistency, and loyalty. While she was building, she thought they were building together. While she was protecting the marriage, she thought he was protecting it too. But now, looking back, she's realizing she might have been holding on to something he already let go of. Her emotional collapse makes sense when you understand what she was trying to preserve, not just love, but family, legacy, partnership. She keeps thinking of the kids, the businesses, the memories, the investments. And at the same time, she's asking herself the questions she was too busy to confront before. How long had Todd been emotionally checked out? When did the shift happen? Why wasn't she paying attention? Or was she paying attention, but hoping it would fix itself? That's the heartbreak fans are seeing now. She's not just losing a partner. She's losing the person she thought would walk beside her through the next decade of her life. And for a woman who has already experienced loss of partners, loss of trust, loss of loyalty, this feels like déjà vu in the worst way. As for Todd, his calm demeanor has become its own mystery. Some say he looks smug. Some say he looks relieved. Others say he looks like a man who finally stepped out of a role he never truly wanted. But the truth may be more complex. Maybe Todd isn't smiling because he's happy. Maybe he's smiling because he's finally free of the expectations that weighed him down. Maybe he spent years feeling small, unheard, or overshadowed. Maybe he felt like no matter what he did, he would always be seen as the opportunist, the tag-along, the one Mama Joyce never approved of. And maybe now, with the marriage ending, he's ready to reclaim whatever identity he feels he lost along the way. What we do know is that this split didn't happen suddenly. It was a long time coming. And the more footage, interviews, and behind-the-scenes details that surface, the clearer that becomes. One insider even claimed Todd had emotionally separated months before the public announcement, explaining why his reaction today seems so different from Kandi's. They said Todd had already done his crying, his processing, his grieving. Kandi was still fighting for the marriage. Todd had already accepted the divorce. And when two people arrive at the end of a relationship at different times emotionally, the breakup always looks lopsided. One is shattered. The other is steady. One is clinging to the past. The other has moved on internally. That's why this divorce feels so dramatic, even unfair, to fans watching from the outside. But beneath all of this, something else has become clear. For years, Kandi and Todd weren't aligned. They weren't moving as one unit. Even though they built businesses together, the emotional partnership was slowly dissolving behind the scenes. Todd wanted a different kind of life, more freedom, more validation, more independence. Kandi wanted stability, loyalty, family, and structure. Those differences may have always been there, but the pressure of fame only magnified them. And now, here we are, Kandi crying in public, Todd walking through airports smiling, and the world trying to piece together who really ended the marriage and why. But the truth is, marriages rarely end for one reason alone. It wasn't the prenup alone. It wasn't the rumors alone. It wasn't Mama Joyce alone. It wasn't opportunity or resentment or ego alone. It was the combination of everything, building slowly, with neither of them addressing the deepest cracks until those cracks became impossible to hide. As this story continues to unfold, one thing is certain: this divorce is far from simple. And the emotional contrast between them, the crying versus the smiling, that's just the surface of a story that runs far deeper than anyone realized.